Welcome to Wine Crime Mystery Chronicles, and thank you for joining me on my porch. This is where I do all things. This is where I usually have my fountain here, where I relax, where I meditate, I do yoga, I do a lot of things, a lot of critical thinking out here. So I wanted to invite you into this space, especially for my very first video. And so my Wine Crime and Mystery Chronicles is inspired by all the wonderful ladies, Sarian, and all of the other ladies who do the makeup crime mystery shows. And I decided to do mine with a different twist, with a real estate twist. And although I'll be telling stories, it will also be incorporating some type of real estate aspect in it. And we'll be talking about real estate crimes, murders in houses, and I will be also sharing a few tips and tidbits about business building for the real estate industry. But mostly it'll be wine, crime, and mysteries. And so our first story today is going to be about the Menendez brothers. And I know that a lot of you guys have heard about the story and, them killing their parents. It was on court TV. It was one of the trials that prompted the whole court TV with the O.J. Simpson, with the Kaylee Anthonys, and those type of stories. So this particular case made those stories possible on court TV. Whether I agree about some things being aired on television or not, don't really quite have an opinion. I do enjoy it. I really enjoyed the Casey Anthony story when it was on trial on TV. So I don't really have a negative or a positive opinion about it. But let's get started. So this cannot be wine, crime, and mystery without me sharing the wine. So after I've told the story, once I finish the video and everything, I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about this wine that I will be drinking throughout. So, the Menendez brothers murdered their parents in 1989, and their parents were Kitty and Jose Menendez, and the Menendez brothers was Lyle and Eric. Lyle was 21 and Kyle was 18. And so, yeah, they murdered their parents. They went into the room where their parents was with shotguns and shot both of their parents. Lyle reloaded and shot his mother, finally killing her at the end. And this case was on, I'm sure you've heard of it, but like I stated before, I'm more concerned not necessarily with the murders and what led up to the murders and why they necessarily did the murders, but I'm more interested in the properties and what happened to the money. What happened to the money? And so after the police didn't show up, after they shot their parents, they waited around, and when the police didn't show up, they decided that they were going to create a story, come up with their alibi. So they went to buy movie tickets, and I believe the movie that they were going to see, at least I read somewhere that it was Batman. So they bought the tickets and they went to discard of the guns that they had used to murder their parents. They discarded them in some woods or, and tried to bury them, but they didn't really have anything to bury the guns with. So, and it had kind of, once the police finally showed, they had went back to the house. And once the police had finally showed up, they explained to the police that, they had found their parents murdered. And, they, of course, when you hear the 911 call, they're all distraught and upset, and you can hear them. It makes you wonder, like, was it a show or wasn't a show? It's a matter of opinion whether you believe how sincere that 911 call was or not. But the story that they told is that, they had went to the movies and that their father had been doing some dirty dealing, and that it was probably a mob hit, and that he was working with some unsavory people, and that's who probably murdered his parents. And based on the way that they were murdered, the parents kind of believed that. And so they searched for, whoever murdered the parents. So it would be another 7 months before the picked up for the murder of their parents. And during that time, what they did is that they, during the 7 months, they spent over $1 million in money. They drove around in their mother's convertible. They bought 2 vehicles. One was a Porsche that was $64,000. They bought over $40,000 in clothes. And the youngest brother, Eric, he was really into tennis, so he paid for an expensive celebrity coach to train him on tennis. Both brothers had their outlets dealing with this, which I'm not going to really get into my opinions about it in this particular video, but I think that I'm going to do an uncut video that will share more about my feelings about the murder and what happened, and whether I felt they were guilty, what I thought about the parents. I will be sharing so much more about that. So during the first trial, it came out that the Menendez brothers stated that their father physically, mentally, and sexually abused them, and that the mother knew about it and did nothing, although they state that she also mentally and physically abused them, but it was nothing sexual with her abuse that she had did, but she allowed it to happen. She knew what the father was doing and she did nothing about it. So during the first trial, the boys had 2 separate lawyers and 2 separate jurors, and at the end of the day, once that trial, the first trial, was concluded, it was a hung jury. It was a mistrial. So at that period of time in California, the prosecutors there, they wasn't having any good luck with prosecuting crimes, and so they were losing every case, every big case that came up, and so they were determined to not lose the Menendez trial. So instead of saying, oh my goodness, we don't have more evidence, this is the end of it, they decided that they were going to retry the brothers, because they didn't want them to get away with the murder of the parents, which is definitely understandable. So during the second trial, they were not allowed to use any of the sexual abuse allegations, which was their defense on why they murdered their parents. It was based on the sexual abuse. And they also, looking through all of the notes, it came out that they also thought their parents were going to kill them, which, once we get to the uncut version, I'll share a little of that. I didn't get a lot of it because when you read a lot about this particular case, these brothers were made out to be rich, spoiled, I'm outside and it's hot and I don't know where those bugs come from, but they were made out to be rich, spoiled kids that killed their parents for the money. And so after I was doing a lot of research on this, yes, they may have done all of that. And do I feel that that was the only reason for the murder? Not necessarily, but that's where my opinion is going to end in this video right now. And so we're back to the second trial. And right before they started the second trial, so one, they can't have any of the evidence of showing that they were abused and maybe molested by their father. The OJ trial had happened, and so the OJ trial had happened, and of course we all know that OJ got off, and so the prosecutors were even more determined to convict these boys because yet again they had lost another trial, and so they had got the evidence of a lot of the things that were admitted into the first trial that was a good defense for the boys. They were not allowed in this second trial. And so at the end, the boys, the Menendez brothers, I keep calling him Kyle, Lyle and Eric, were convicted of murdering their parents. And they were given life sentences without the option or the ability to have parole. So throughout this time, because it's been about 30 years Since then, they have gone through appeal after appeal, and none of them have been successful. But I'll go back to that piece a little later. And for the exciting part, the real estate. I've been so inquisitive about people who move into houses where families or individuals have been murdered. Like, who moves into these houses? Would you move into a house? I would love to know if you would move into a house where someone was murdered. Please drop it in the comments. I was having a conversation with my husband the other day, and I was explaining to him, I was like, every house, and I've bought about 4 to 5 houses in my lifetime. I hope that's not aging me. I don't know. But in every house that I've purchased, I've always looked up to see if someone was murdered in the house that I was purchasing. But while researching some similar houses recently, I found that that information doesn't necessarily come up unless the media is talking about it. That whether someone was murdered in a house, it doesn't come up. But I did find a website that if you put in an address or if you put in a name, that you can search to see if the house you're living in or interested in purchasing, if someone has been murdered, or if there's, known ghosts or goblins or anything that has happened that's out that is weird is there. Now, not all houses will come up, but there is a chance that it will. So it's worth checking out. I'll put the link to that website in the description and you can check it out. So, okay, wait. I know I mentioned that we were going to talk about the real estate part first, but I really want to talk about the fortune, the money, all of the money that the Menendez owned. I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to read this off because I don't want to miss one number. So, 1 second. I almost messed that up. Okay, so the Menendez estate was worth $14 million. And so after everything was said and done, $4 million kind of went to the estate taxes and everything. $5.4 million went to attorneys and legal fees for all of the trials that went on. $4.1 million went to pay off the mortgages of the homes because they owned 2. And there was a series, there's a series of fees, legal, and all of that, including the $5 million. It kind of totaled $11 million. And so at the end of the day, it is said that the estate was only worth, after everything was paid out and everything was paid off, about $700,000. Now, who got that money, I'm not exactly sure. I know that Jose's mother, which is the dad, not his mother, but his sister was a financial planner who came up with the original estimate of what the estate was worth. So I don't know if the money went to her or it went to her mother or to Kitty's family, which is the boy's mother. But when you look into what they're worth today, it says they're not worth anything, the brothers. And I don't necessarily know if I don't think that when you murder someone that you have access to the estate. So that it had to be family members who had access to the estate that would allow for some of the funds to go to defending the boys. Because it turns out that a lot of the family members, and when you have a family, you're gonna have those that believe and those that don't believe you. And so, but the majority of the family seem to have been on the boy's side, especially his, his dad's sister and his dad's mother, who still would go and visit them in prison, really was on their side, even Kitty's side of the family. So, the real estate portion. I know that I was going to get to this part a while back, but I wanted to hold off on this part. I wanted to kind of save it for last. And so with the real estate, at the time of the murder, they owned this Beverly Hills home. It was $4 million. It sold for 1.2 million. Well, there was a 1.2 million loss in when the house sold in 1991. And of course, you know, they have that stigma of the murder homes where the value of the home can go down as much as like 35%. And so it's very interesting to see, you know, that actually someone moved in like about a year and a half after the murders. So the first owner was a mystery TV writer. And then in 2001, he sold it again to a telecommunication executive. As far as I know, that is who still owns the home today. And they have, it looks very much the same as it did then, but they have, I think it was like a gate that they had up at the time, and they removed it. Now, I had read an article, it's a bug, bugs. I had read an article in Vanity Fair, and I'll probably link it below, but it wasn't a kind article about the house. They talked about how this particular house, when, you know, the family put it up for sale, you know, shortly after the death, this writer or editor went into the home to view it, and he was saying that it was not in good shape, it didn't look good, that it was, you know, not updated. They really didn't take good care of the home, which is they probably decided not to do too much to the home, since they were, at the time of their death, they were renovating another home in Calabasas. So this first home was in Beverly Hills, and today when you go on Zillow, if you trust Zillow's recommendation, which is kind of sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I use it as a guide whenever I'm buying new properties. But today on Zillow, it says that the property is estimated at $5.4 million, which is good, because then I think the stigma kind of has went away. I don't know if today I would still purchase that house. No, I know for a fact that I would not purchase that house today. But I wonder if, you know, as I mentioned before, I always look up the homes before I purchase it. But to buy a house, to spend $1 or $5 million for it, I don't know if I want a house that someone has been murdered in. I wonder if you can tear it down, but such a beautiful house in Beverly Hills to tear down. But I don't know. I don't even know if I tore it down, would I still want to live there? So I'm not sure. But when the telecommunications executive bought it, he bought it for $3.7 million. So the value even went up after that. So it looks like, you know, sometimes the stigma goes off the house, even though it's initial stigma on the house. Very interesting. Now, the beautiful home here in Calabasas, they were renovating at the time of their death. They purchased this home for $950,000, and it appraised at 2.65, and when they sold it, it sold for 1.3 million in 1994 to a couple. I have the names, I just don't want to share the names of the couple, let them have their privacy and their space. But today, so with this particular home, no one was murdered in it, no one died in this home, but it's still, as you see, the value decreased from it being appraised at 2.6 million to 1.3 million. So why did this particular house have a stigma? Why did its value in 1994 go down so drastically? And so if you're an appraiser, or even if you're in the real estate industry and you have any idea why a house where someone wasn't murdered, but because they owned another home that they were murdered, and why did the value of this particular home go down? Right? It's a beautiful, this Calabasas home is beautiful. And I'll share the links below, but you can see some nice pictures of it. And as a nice little surprise, at the time that I am recording this particular home is for sale at the moment, and it is on the market for $1.6 million. So although the value of this home decreased, after the murder, it has gone up significantly. So I don't think that it necessarily has the same stigma that it had at that time. And so, yeah, it's very interesting about the way the real estate piece works. Whether you would buy a home that someone was murdered in, would you ask for a huge decrease? Is a $1.3 million decrease enough that will allow you to live comfortably in that home? Do you have to worry? I noticed that a lot of these homes where people were murdered, or maybe they have some ghostly sightings, that they draw people in. So even when researching this for the Menendez home, the Beverly Hills home, you can see pictures of people taking, pictures in front of the house, selfies and all of that. So those homes kind of draw that type of attention also, with people that are fascinated with the case. So today, the Menendez brothers are approximately they're in their late 40s, early 50s. And both of the brothers have created a life for themselves in prison. Well, Eric, if I can remember right, Eric, he is working with older people in hospice. So when at the end of their life, he is helping them through that process. So he works in the hospice area of the prison. And Lyle works with helping prisoners that have had to deal with abuse, mental, physical, and sexual abuse. So both of them, in their own way, is contributing and giving back to the prison system that they're in. When they were right after they were convicted of the murders, they attempted to get themselves placed into the same prison system. Their attorneys thought that them being together, they would survive better, they would function better in prison and maneuver the prison system positively if they were together. Well, the prosecutor thought completely different. They felt that if they planned and committed these murders together, then in prison they'll plan and create and commit other crimes in prison together. So they made it so that they were completely separated. And I think that around, maybe I could be wrong, don't quote me, but I believe in 2018 they got an opportunity to see each other. I think one of the brothers was being transferred. There's always a plane every time I'm out here doing a video. But one of the brothers was getting transferred. And so today I'm not sure 100% if they are in the, hold on, we're gonna let this go past. So today I'm not sure if they are together at the same prison or not, but I know that they attempted it in the beginning, and so I'm not exactly sure if they are today. So both of the Menendez brothers both got married while they were in prison. So yes, there is love in lockup. So Eric Menendez, he married Tammy Sakoma, who he married in 1996, and his grandmother and his cousin was at the wedding when he married her, and they still are married today, 20 years later. And when you listen to the interviews with her, she refers to him as her best friend in the world. So there is love and lockup, right? Lyle, he married Anna Erickson in 1996, but they got a divorce. She divorced him because she found out he was cheating on her with writing other letters and things to other women. Yes, girl, they cheat in prison also. And so he has remarried. He remarried Rebecca Sneed in 2003, who is a defense attorney. So we're going to put a pause on that defense attorney for 1 second. So 2020, the governor of California enacted a law, and I could be saying this wrong, but the law is supposed to allow people who had sexual assaults or sexual evidence removed from their cases. And so they are allowing those people, those cases, to have appeals. And so this is a great opportunity for the Menendez brothers to have their case appealed. Ooh, books. Have their case appealed. And so what better than to having a wife that's your defense attorney to make that happen for you. So I think they are going to start working on that process. I had watched a documentary where they mentioned this law. I had read about this law earlier this year for something totally different, but they also mentioned in this documentary I watched about this same exact law. So maybe they'll do it. Maybe that's why he married her. Never know. We'll see. But thank you for listening. I thought this was a great opportunity. I can't wait to share the uncut version so that I can share some of my opinions about the case, which I didn't want to do in there. I didn't want to put my bias in there while I was telling this story. So make sure you catch that. If you want to catch my next video, please subscribe and ring the bell below so that you can be alerted the next time I upload a video. See you next time.